We are continuing our NHL playoff and prediction series. Now we're taking a look at the Islanders versus the Penguins, and that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, today we're continuing our NHL playoff and prediction series going. We're looking at the 4 versus 1 series in the Eastern Division with the Pittsburgh Penguins doing battle with the New York Islanders. We saw these two teams have very different ends to their season. The Penguins ending on a real strong note and winning the division, where the Islanders certainly were a division leading contender all year, really kind of dropped off and ended up finishing in 4th place, and now they're set to do battle here with the Penguins. So it could be a tale of two very different teams here, one that's really more defensive minded and built for the playoffs, whereas you have more of an offensive team with a lot of history of winning Stanley Cups on the other side. So it's going to be a really solid battle here, in my opinion. We're going to break this down here by taking a look at some regular season stats to compare each team, see what kind of differences and things that are really going to stick out to us. We're also going to do a goalie comparison to see where there might be an advantage on either side. We're also going to compare the top scorers for each team to see who might have an advantage that way, and then at the end I'll give you my prediction. So let's jump right into it here and take a look at the team's regular season stats and see how they stack up. So the first place Penguins finished with a record of 37-16-3 for 77 points. The Islanders, on the other hand, finished with a record of 32-17-7 for 71 points. So not a drastic difference really between the two teams in regular season records here. But like I said, the Penguins win the division where the Islanders finished 4th. Now in the season series, the Penguins did win the series 5-3, but these two teams haven't played since March 29th. They wrapped up their season series really early. So I think it's fair to say that each team has kind of had a lot going on since then, except for the Penguins being a hotter team, the Islanders being a struggling team, more so down the stretch here. So these two teams are not necessarily in the same spots as they were when they last played, which could make things interesting and a little bit tougher to predict. And really, in my opinion, on all 8 of these first round series, a lot of them, even though you got 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, a lot of them to me are going to be a coin flip. And I won't be surprised if I get them all right, all wrong, or 50%. Like, it's really, really hard. And a lot of these series, in my opinion, really could go either way with just a couple of little, small differences to make the difference on one team or another. Now, looking at some of the more of the team stats here, let's take a look here at their goals for and special teams. Now, the Penguins were one of the highest scoring teams in the league, 2nd overall, 193 goals for, where they allowed 155 against for 14th best. So certainly some pretty decent numbers there. The Islanders, on the other hand, as we know, struggled to score a little bit more. They scored 152 times for 20th best, so pretty drastically different that way. However, the Islanders were the 2nd best defensive team with 125 goals against. So certainly, like I said, a tale of two very differently built teams here. So it's going to be offense versus defense, and who will prevail, which is what we're going to have to determine here by the end of this video. Now on special teams, the Islanders had an 18.8 efficiency rate on the power play for 21st best, whereas the Penguins had 23.7 for 4th best. So certainly the Islanders, even though they're a strong defensive team, they don't want to get into the penalty trouble and give this Penguin team too many opportunities on a power play, because it could mean all the difference in the world. Penalty killing wise, the Islanders are pretty solid though, at 83.7% for 6th best, whereas the Penguins had a 27th best, 77.4. So again, it goes both ways. Even though the Islanders are not the most offensively gifted team, the fact that the Penguins struggle so hard in the PK, I would not want to be getting into penalty trouble against the Islanders, even though they're not, tearing it up offensively on the power play. When the power play is facing a PK that struggles that much, it could be exactly what they need to get things ignited. Face off, the Islanders were certainly a fair bit stronger here, 51.4% for 9th best, whereas the Penguins had a 49.3% winning rate on the face-offs for 21st best, which is certainly a little unusual for them, especially with a guy like Crosby taking a high number of draws, and certainly, somebody who's obviously very strong at it. But overall here, like I said, very, very different teams. It's hard to say how this is going to go when you have such drastically different teams and where they're strong and where they're not so strong. Now let's take a look at the goaltending situation to see how things stack up in that department. Now looking at the Islanders first here, we got Semyon Varlamov had a really solid regular season, 19-11-4, a 204 goals against, and a 929 save percentage while putting up 7 shutouts. He was very stingy this year, and his backup, Ilya Sorokin, had a pretty solid year as well with a record of 13-6-3, a 217 goals against, and a 918 save percentage, while also putting up 3 shutouts. So the Islanders shut their opponents out 10 times this year, which is absolutely phenomenal in a 56-game schedule. Whereas the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be likely starting with Tristan Jarry, who had a record of 25-9-3, a 275 goals against, and a 909 save percentage, while putting up 2 shutouts. And he'll be backed up by Casey DeSmith, who had a record of 11-7-0, with a 254 goals against, a 912 save percentage, and also putting up 2 shutouts. So clearly the advantage here between the pipes is on the Islanders side. I think they're the deeper team, having 2 really solid grade A goaltenders. And obviously Varlamov, really deserves to be in that Vezina conversation. I think Vasilevsky is likely going to win that award this year, but certainly he had another phenomenal year. I know when he first came over from the Avalanche, I really questioned that move. After giving up on Robin Lehner, coming off his really solid year and winning a bunch of hardware himself. But Varley's been awesome for the Islanders ever since he arrived. And of course, being Russian as well, can also mentor the younger Sorokin, being, from Russia himself as well. Great guy to be able to learn from. Obviously help with any language barriers, getting acclimated to North America and all that stuff, to have somebody from his fellow country to really work with that way. I think it was probably going to be huge for Sorokin's long-term development. Definitely advantage Islanders between the pipes for sure. And if they can shut down this Penguins offense and continue to play at that rate, then that's certainly going to be a huge advantage to give the Islanders a chance to win. They need their goaltending to hold up the way it has all year, or they're going to be in trouble. Now, when it comes to their top scorers on each side, let's take a look and see how they compare. We're probably going to see some pretty drastically different results here. Looking at the Penguins first, led by captain Sidney Crosby with 62 points, still continuing to play at an over point per game pace, even at his current age, and where he's at in his career is phenomenal. He's going to go down, obviously, already as one of the all-time greats, but how he continues to produce and stay in shape and everything is absolutely phenomenal. Jake Gensel had a solid year at 57 points. Chris Letang at 45, Brian Rust at 42, Jared McCann at 32, and of course Kasperi Kapanen at 30. Now with Kapanen, keep in mind he missed a bunch of games to start the year because of immigration and visa issues. Obviously he played previously in Canada, so had to get everything worked out to be able to play in the States. Was a little bit late arriving. I'm not sure all the fine details of that, but he did miss a bunch of time at the beginning. And of course, missing from that list is the very dangerous Evgeny Malkin, who's battled his fair share of injuries this year and missed a fair bit of time. So if they have Malkin for the playoffs, obviously that is going to play a major role here as well on what his health and conditioning and ability to produce is going to be, because that's a drastically different team with or without Malkin in the lineup here. But he did return towards the end of the regular season, so we'll see how things go for Pittsburgh with Malkin in the lineup. On the Islanders side, we have obviously Matthew Barzal, the most offensive player on that team, led the way with 45 points, followed up by Josh Bailey at 35, Brock Nelson and Jordan Eberle next at 33, Nick Leddy on defense at 31, and Anthony Beauvillier at 28. So as much as we could say here that the Islanders clearly don't have the offensive elite players that the Penguins do, they are a pretty deep and consistent team. You could also throw Pageau in the mix there as well, who was tied with Beauvillier in points. So you know what? The Penguins are a pretty deep team as well, though. That's the thing that we've seen with them in recent years, is that they might have had the high-end talent, but they don't always have the depth, which is the main difference between when they've won cups versus bombing out early. But besides the guys we mentioned there on their list, they also have Jeff Carter, who they picked up at the trade deadline, who's been playing extremely well for them. They have Jason Zucker as well. They have a deep lineup in that forward group that's, better than it has been, in my opinion, in the last few years. On defense, guys like Matheson and Ceci had really solid seasons. Guys that were expected to not do well at all really surprised a lot of people. And in the Islanders, even though they don't have a lot of elite offensive players outside of Matthew Barzal, they are pretty deep, pretty consistent as well. And this team is built for playoff hockey. In the Barry Trotz style of play, in the defense first with the strong net minding, really has allowed the Islanders to have a lot of playoff success in the past couple of seasons. So as I mentioned, I think even though this is a 4 versus 1 matchup, and I bet a lot of people will predict that the Pens will win, especially given their strong play down the stretch and the fact that the Islanders didn't do so well. I am going to go ahead and predict that the Islanders are going to pull it out. It's going to be really tight, though, and I think they're going to be able to keep the Penguins' offense at bay, which is going to allow them to have timely goals. They're going to have to produce on special teams. They're going to have to continue to have a strong PK and be able to take advantage of the power play. As I said, the Penguins' PK could be their Achilles heel here, and if the Islanders can convert on their opportunities, even if they don't get a lot, that could mean the difference there. Now, one of the other big things for the Islanders down the stretch was that trade deadline acquisition where they get Palmieri and Zajac, and that didn't really give them the boost that they thought they were going to be getting. Like, we could argue that both players struggled to fit in. Zajac's been a healthy scratch at times. Palmieri has not really produced a whole lot like he did in New Jersey. So, you know what? Maybe they didn't get a whole lot better, but at the same time, I think they were already pretty darn good as it was, and I still think they can make a little bit of playoff noise here. Now, this division as well, you get the other series being Boston and Washington. Whoever wins this, like, they're going to both have a heck of a time here to get out of this division. It's pretty much a coin toss. It's anybody's best guess. Like I said, I won't be shocked if I'm wrong here. I hope no teams that I predict to lose are going to be offended by any means, because it's just that close and that tight in my opinion. But at the end of the day here, I just think the Islanders style is built for playoff success, even though they didn't show the greatest play here down the stretch heading into the playoffs. If the Islanders can frustrate the offensive guys on the other side, like I think they're capable of doing, then it should be something they can pull off. But I can see this series being tight, maybe going 7 games. So let me know what your thoughts are. Who will win this series? How is it going to play out? Give me your predictions down in the comments and we can discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news from all 32 NHL teams. And of course, stay tuned for the rest of the playoff previews coming here very shortly. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.